The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
This is News Talk.
Hello there, you're very welcome along to this evening's show. Lots going on. So it's Champions League evening. Manchester United need a point in Leipzig. Paul Pogba is on his way out of the club. It would seem. We're going to chat to Miguel Delaney this hour in advance of kick-off. Meanwhile, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo share a field this evening. Perhaps, we hope not, but perhaps for the last time. Simon Cooper is always a brilliant guest. He's with us on the football show, and we'll chat about two very different men who have ruled the footballing world for nearly 15 years. It is, of course, All-Ireland hurling final week. Waterford back in the showpiece, hoping to banish memories of 17, most certainly memories of 08. We'll talk to two of the men on the field in 08. Dan the Man's going to join us after 8 o'clock, and Ken McGrath as well. 53106, the text number. We're at Off the Ball. Dan the Man is, of course, Dan Shanahan. You all know that. And hurling fans, if you're interested for some more goodness from OTB Sports, then Richie Hogan was on AM this morning. Very good interview. You'll get it on the app. In your app store now, just search OTB Sports. Richie McCormack, good evening.
Hey Joe, you well?
Very well, very well, very well. Ronan, Mullen, hello to you.
Joe, how you doing?
Thank you for your hard work. You gave me the brief on Dan Shanahan, Ken McGrath. One of the memories I'd forgotten from the 08 final, when Waterford were there and very excited, was just the extent to which they were demolished, and so early on. At half-time, Richie, as the Waterford players walked into the dressing room, as Kilkenny were already thinking 3 in a row, like the sound of that. The scoreline read, Waterford 5 points, 5 points in one half of hurling. Waterford 5 points, Kilkenny 2-16.
Yeah, it was freakish. Like that was at the point where we were questioning, would there be ever any stopping this Kilkenny side? Because already, as you mentioned, although they haven't racked up the amount of consecutive All-Irelands in football, say that Dublin have, in hurling terms, they looked incredible, and we were wondering, when was this ever going to end? Because it wasn't chumps that they were beating in the final. Like you mentioned, the calibre of player, the two that we have on tonight, Ken McGrath and Dan Shanahan, like incredible players, and there were incredible players dotted through that side during the 2000s for Waterford, and for some reason, it just never happened.
Yeah. Davy Fitz joined in the middle of that season. It's quite an interesting year, 08, Ronan. So Justin McCarthy was their manager who led the breakthroughs in Munster in many ways, and they had some great days and won Munster in 02, and 04 was their third Munster final in a row. They won in 07 as well, so they were on a great run, and then they lost to Clare in 08 and he got the boot, and Davy Fitz was announced his first Inter-County job 5 days later and took them to a final. So it's kind of an interesting year. Dan Shanahan famously didn't shake Justin McCarthy's hand in the Clare game when he was substituted, so there's obviously bits and bobs going on, so we'll get into all that after 8 o'clock.
Yeah, like dictionary definition of new manager bounce Davy Fitzgerald, and sort of was the prototype of what he was going to bring to management and to the sideline in particular, like that high energy approach that was true in what he brought to the table as well as what he instilled in his players. But 07, I think maybe two of the greatest GA matches I've ever attended were almost by accident, where in 07, I went to Kerry against Monaghan in Croke Park. I was on the hill for that, and it was one of the games where Monaghan ran Kerry particularly close, lost by a point. But on the same day, Waterford against Limerick, we're playing in the All-Ireland semi-final, and again, a much vaunted Waterford team, heavily fancied to make it to the final with the hurler of the year in tow, like Dan Shanahan, just unplayable that year. And it was just an incredible game. And then the year before, Louth were in the Tommy Murphy Cup, Joe, in 2006.
Who could forget?
And they obviously wiped the floor with the opposition. They fought home the title that day. But that was the same day that Kieran McDonald kicked those two sensational points against Dublin in that unforgettable Mayo Dublin game. So those are the two games. I don't get too much glory following Louth GA, Joe. 2010 was almost that day before, what happened. But that's my main memory of Waterford hurling, and there's few counties as synonymous with anything as Waterford are with hurling, so it's great to see them back so soon after. They put up a reasonably good showing in the Munster final. I'm sure they'll want to be doing better than giving a reasonable showing when they take the field at Croke Park, but it bodes well that they went stride for stride with Limerick for much of that game. It did feel like Limerick had a few gears to go maybe in that Munster final, but I think it sets the table for an interesting game at the weekend.
It sure did. Listen, your line needs sorting. We're going to call you right back. You're just not coming through loud and clear. Before we get into the news round, Richie, just to mention, I know you have it in your news round, but I'm just struck, I think a lot of people are, by Steve Thompson's interview in The Guardian. It's gone around the world. He is very much part of this class action that a number of players are taking against World Rugby at the moment over concerns over their health, frankly, their brain health, be it dementia, be it CTE, Parkinson's, you name it. So extraordinary interview. I mean, it's chilling, it's awful. Steve Thompson is very much a modern day player, certainly for those of our age. You know, he is part of that first wave of fully professional players. That's the frightening thing. So he's 42 years of age. If you haven't seen this World Cup winner, you'll know Steve Thompson, even if you're a pretty casual rugby fan. He's been diagnosed with early onset dementia, and he's told he most likely as well has CTE. He says in the interview, it's rugby that put me through this, and that's why he says he would undo it all if he could. Some people go for the big lights, whereas I don't want that. I never wanted that. I just want to have a normal life. I mean, it's desperate. He says these days he forgets. Andy Bull wrote the piece in The Guardian. These days he forgets. He forgets directions, which bits of a book he has read, and what TV shows he has watched. Sometimes he even forgets his wife's name. There's a quote here from Steve Thompson. I could look at Steph sometimes and she's like, and she says, it's like I'm a complete blank, and she'll go, I'm Steph. But the name's gone. Andy Bull writes, he suffers from anxiety too. He started having panic attacks. I'm not surprised. Started having panic attacks. Sometimes he finds he gets aggressive for no good reason. Quote here from Steve Thompson, it's weird, it's like an out-of-body experience, to be honest. It happens a lot more now. Later on he talks about the guilt that he's feeling. Steph is younger than him. He says, I'm thinking, what have I done to her? She doesn't deserve this. He says, she's taken the diagnosis in her stride. She just went, I'll just have to care for you now, won't I? But, writes the journalist Andy Bull, he worries how she'll cope. There's a quote then from Thompson, I'm not a small bloke, you know, I'm 6'3", I'm 120 kilos. So if you've got to care for me, it's quite a bit of meat to carry around. 42 years of age, it is horrific. I mean, it is horrific.
It is. Rugby is facing a reckoning in terms of how it deals with head injuries, how it deals with dementia, how it deals with CTE. This class action, essentially, that's been brought by Thompson and 7 others towards, I think it's the RFU, the WRU, and World Rugby. This could, depending on who else is involved, because I think Steve Bull's piece and the BBC mentioned that there are 50 other players aged between 25 and 55 who've expressed concerns. 80 other players, who've expressed concerns about how they are essentially showing symptoms of early onset dementia. Having been up close and personal with dementia, it is no fun. Players and people of that age shouldn't have to deal with it. Rugby has come a long way, we have to say, and even in the Steve Thompson era, like, rugby has come a long way in how it deals with head injuries, how it deals with tackles, what it deems acceptable in terms of tackles. But, and this is something that we touched on a good few times in the show, it's something that we touched on in pay-per-views, I know, in terms of how the bulk of players has just gone up over the course of the last 20 years, and especially just basically in the professional era, whereby everybody is almost of the same body type now. You used to be able to, and it's something I've always pointed out, you could tell a player's position by their body shape. If they were a cannonball of a human being, they were playing in the front row. If they were one of, somebody my height and above, they were playing second row, third row. Now everybody's just this massive tank, and everybody's barreling into each other at full pelt, and the damage that does to one's head, and there's nothing you can do to protect yourself against this in terms of helmets and all that, because regardless if you have your helmet, if you had a helmet on, or if you have a skull cap on, your head is still shaking, your brain is still colliding with your skull, and damage is being done to the most important organ in your body. And rugby has massive decisions to make in how, for want of a better term, it tackles this now, because they are going to have an avalanche of these cases down through the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years, maybe, depending on how long these guys are able to live, because it's not going to be fun for an awful lot of ex-rugby players if rugby is allowed to continue with its emphasis on size, and its need for bulk, and its need for guys to plow into each other at the speed and at the velocity that they do, because it's not going to do anybody any good. And I know, as Thompson mentions, and I have a clip coming up later, how he talks about tackle drills and he talks about the player load and the amount of games that they're expected to play in a week, for instance, during that 2003 World Cup. And that they're all fair points. But again, like those things haven't gone away. Like, we're still dealing with players who are taking massive collisions, and they don't necessarily need to have direct blows to your head from somebody's forearm or from head on head or from knee on head or whatever it might happen to be. Just the impact of your common or garden tackle is enough to do damage to what's inside your skull. And rugby has some serious big boy conversations to have now over the course of the next while. It has to deal with this claim from the 8 lads, and it has to deal with everything else that will, and I guarantee it will, come over the next while.
Well, we should start the news round. There is a bottom line, though, in that discussion. Physicality is intrinsic to rugby. There's just a bottom line. You can't separate it. You can't. And that is the really difficult thing for the sport. So we'll have to talk about that some more. The news round on Off the Ball and Newstalk is with thanks to Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. So you're starting with this news, which has broken really in the last kind of hour or so.
Last 2 hours,
Yeah, we suspected this could happen because Ireland were in one of the 5-team groups for World Cup qualification. So that is now a 6-team group.
In effect, yes. The Republic of Ireland are being made to face Qatar as part of their World Cup qualifying campaign. The Gulf states have been parachuted into European qualifying Group A alongside Ireland, Portugal, Serbia, Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. Qatar, as we know, are hosts of the 2022 World Cup, and the games against those European sides will be glorified friendlies which won't count towards the group standing. The news is unlikely to go down well with Ireland boss Stephen Kenny, who'd welcomed the streamlined 5-team group, and he thought a 2-match international window come March. He's now facing a 3-game window in March, starting with Serbia away, Luxembourg at home, and the first visit of Qatar to Ireland. The second game won't actually be in the Gulf state. It'll come in Europe somewhere at a venue TBD, 3 days after Ireland's trip to Azerbaijan and Baku, which in itself is a bit of a schlep. And Ireland will finish their campaign at home to Portugal in November next, and then away to Luxembourg.
To be fair to Kenny, he did acknowledge last night in the press conference that there was every likelihood a friendly would be arranged in the 2-game windows, that he thought 3-game windows were now a part of 2020, 2021, certainly. So it won't shock him he has 3 games. I'd say the Qatar thing is kind of raised an eyebrow. So for Qatar, it's just to help with their World Cup preparations. Serbia away, Luxembourg at home, and then Qatar in March. That's not a dreadful way to start the campaign. So they'll beat Luxembourg. The Qatar game they don't have to worry about, which is great. And then you start off Serbia away. I mean, the only World Cup template I have is when we got there in 2002, the only one this century anyway. And away to Holland was a good way to kick off. You know, you get a good result.
Holland and Portugal were away that year.
Yeah. So you get on the front foot, you know, Serbia away. And obviously if you lose to Serbia, it's not a disaster away because you have the home fixture. I don't think that's an absolutely horrible way to start off in March. Ronan, I don't know how it sounds to you. Serbia, Luxembourg and of course Qatar.
No, it all sounds good on paper, Joe, but I think I do remember having a similar conversation about the Euros qualifying campaign under Mick McCarthy. It's like, first game up, Gibraltar. That's a handy number. We'll get a few goals against them. It looked pretty good, get off to a good start. Turned out not to be the case. It was actually quite a torrid afternoon/evening for Ireland, on and off the pitch, you might remember, and it kind of set in motion what was a rather forgettable campaign. But like, this is... Third is still par, and it's like borne out by the seedings, but Ireland, we kind of still see ourselves as maybe punching up and trying to get into second, and second is where we want to be. But, you know, the reality is we've been in groups with Serbia not so long ago and like finished behind them. Our only experience of being in a group with Portugal recently, they topped the group, so that's kind of where we're at. And the Qatar thing, at least it's not Oman. That's kind of the main thing I can say about that. And you know, as you said, there would have been friendlies scheduled for that period regardless. So, you know, it's just one of those things, I think.
The reality is just tough, full stop, isn't it? So us finishing second is an ask for sure. And even if we manage to do that, we have to be one of the 3 best second place teams. And just, you know, to date, let's be honest, we haven't exactly been...
It's not,
sorry, Rich, I'll just finish. We haven't even been prolific. So the odds of us being in the top 3 is scary. And then if you finish in the top 3, it's not like you're just one playoff game away. You've got another couple of games to go. So, like, the route to this World Cup is arduous at this point, to say the least.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not even a matter of being one of the 3 best second place teams. You just have to be one of the second place teams. Then you go into this qualifying path, the same that we kind of saw with us playing Slovakia, and then it would have been potentially Bosnia or Northern Ireland. So you've a few trips to go before you can actually get through the playoff route. The Qatar thing is lunacy. Like, you can see why it's happened. Like, it's clearly happened because there is a move by football authorities, given the fact that this World Cup, rightly or wrongly, is heading to the Gulf state in 2 years' time. There's an authority to essentially legitimise the footballing abilities and all that of Qatar. And yeah, they've been lumped into the Copa America a couple of years ago, or last year, sorry. They're going to be again next year. They're going to play in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. So essentially they're playing on 3 different continents just to go, hey, look, we've got a football team. We're going to be all right in the World Cup. And it's an effort to legitimise and create these false bona fides for a country who shouldn't be hosting the tournament. And we're kind of going to suffer as a result. We're going to have to probably still be in a COVID world for this March window. And we've seen what happens with 3-game windows in the past with this Ireland side. So we could do without it.
Yeah, but to be a friendly either way. I mean, whatever about the geopolitical aspect of these things, there's a friendly either way. Stephen Kenny said as much last night. So,
yeah, but
it's not that big a deal, really.
But he doesn't need the extra game. He doesn't need the hassle of players being in the bubble for an extra game.
But that is happening regardless. There would be a friendly either way for revenue, if nothing else. So,
but the only upside I see to this is that Qatar game in March comes at the end of the window.
Yeah,
so
he doesn't need to worry about it at all.
Yeah. He doesn't need to worry about it in that sense, but like, it's still a headache he'd do without, and it's all essentially for cash.
Do you not accept he would have a friendly in that window regardless? That's the point.
Would have a friend, yeah.
Well, then,
he might have a friendly.
Like, it's not, it really. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I don't think it is. I mean, anyway, look.
Say that to the clubs when they're testing positive for COVID and you're sending them back at the start of April.
No, I get that. I get that, but that's just as likely with a friendly, which would happen. I tell you what, Rich, just pretend it's a friendly against Qatar, will you? And we'll get past this.
It is a friendly against Qatar.
Right,
it's just a pain in the arse.
Yeah, well, all friendlies are. That's just the nature of the world. And I mean, if Qatar think 90 glorious minutes of a match against Ireland is going to have the world sitting up going, woof, I tell you what, these Qatar boys, they're something, then they're in for a rude awakening. So to matters more at hand, Paul Pogba on the bench, not a shocker.
Yeah, not really. Manchester United needing a point tonight if they're to qualify for the Champions League knockout phase. Their way to last season's semi-finalist RB Leipzig. RB go with Galaxy in goal, Mukiele, Kanate, Oban and Angelino as a back 4. In midfield it's Haidara, Sabitzer and Kevin Campbell, with Nkunku and Emil Forsberg in behind Olmo up front. For United, David Gea starts in goal. It looks like a back 3 then of Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw, with Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Alex Tellez providing the width. Nemanja Matic and Scott McTominay will sit in midfield, with Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford providing the assistance for Mason Greenwood up front. As you mentioned, Pogba on the bench after Mino Raiola's outburst last night claiming that his client wants out come the summer. At the same time, in that group tonight, Paris Saint-Germain also need a result away to Istanbul Başakşehir. Chelsea already assured of top spot in Group E ahead of their game with Krasnodar. That's at Stamford Bridge at 8. The other main area of intrigue tonight is in Group F. Both had 5:55 kickoffs here. Lazio leading Club Brugge by 2-1. Brugge down to 10 men, and Lazio qualify as group winners if things stay as is. Zenit and Dortmund are level at a goal apiece over in Russia. Dortmund will go through in second position. Looks like Bruges will be heading into the Europa League. And as things stand, Group G's top 2 meeting at the Camp Nou, as you mentioned, it is a meeting of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, both in their respective starting 11s tonight. Dinamo Kiev and Ferencvaros are battling for a Europa League spot in that group.
Somebody's texting to say they stopped their sons both over 6 foot from playing rugby back in the 80s. And Neil in Marino, hey there, I'm wondering now that the Qatar World Cup qualifying is launched, and in particular, given we're going to be playing Qatar in the group, when are the OTB lads going to address properly the elephant in the room, the horrific human rights abuses of the Qatar regime in general, and particularly in relation to World Cup stadia and infrastructure projects? Neil in Marino. Do a quick Google. I'd say, Neil, genuinely well over a dozen pieces, if not 20 pieces, over the last 2-3 years. You'll find them all there. We've had lots of really good guests. People have been on site. I suspect it will arise again and again and again in the build-up to the World Cup. Don't you worry. Where are we going next, Rich?
to the capital. Cian O'Sullivan says the Dublin side have become used to blocking out talk of their dominance. They booked a place in a 6th consecutive All-Ireland football final with a comfortable win over Cavan on Saturday night. They'll face Mayo on Sunday week at Croke Park amid talk of funding cuts to the capital and splitting the county in 2, or perhaps 3, or perhaps 4. But speaking to OTB Sports today, O'Sullivan says that talk is kept out of the playing panel.
We try and preserve that bubble and not let those things come in and distract us. So from that respect, if you're disciplined in that, it shouldn't, and we are very disciplined in that. We have to be, because over the last number of years there's been so many potential distractions thrown at this team. We're the capital city and county, but we're also the media capital as well, because and all that spotlight and attention that comes with that, it's something that has been a big challenge, but because it's been such a big challenge in the past, we've got very good at insulating ourselves from it. So I guess that's how we deal with those types of issues.
Maybe their best strategy, Ronan, going forward is every decade to throw 3 All-Irelands strategically, just be in that control that they nominate what years they're going to, let one slip, and that way they can ultimately win more over the long term.
Could be this year, Joe.
Could be.
Like, this is the thing. This conversation is in full effect because of what we saw at the weekend. But if Mayo, as they're wont to do, exceed their own performance levels and put it up to Dublin and make it a close game and actually close it out for once, does this conversation just magically disappear? Like, I think not. Like, Leinster's still going to be the same way it was next year, if not worse. And it feels like it's going to get marginally worse and worse as the years go by. And it's difficult to know what the long-term solution is. Like, it's all well and good saying split Dublin in 2 until it's Dublin North versus Dublin South in the All-Ireland finals in 10 years. And I don't think that's, even Dublin fans wouldn't be too keen on that prospect. So
there'd be a hell of an atmosphere at the north side versus the south side. I mean, maybe there'd be something in it. I don't know. The rest of the country might feel a touch disenfranchised. I've listened to a lot of brilliant conversations, brilliant people over the last couple of days, and not once, Richie, to be fair, have I heard of a 1 or 2 line solution where I thought, okay, that could work over the long term. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just incredibly complicated, and money or no money, and money is important for sure. Ultimately, the population problem is the problem now that the strength of that population has been harnessed. And I'd be really anti ever splitting Dublin in 2. Like, really anti it. There's got to be lots of other solutions. I just can't think them up quite yet.
Well, that's the thing. Like, you're waiting for, and a lot of people are waiting for 2-3 line summations of how, the silver bullet that essentially fix all of this and make everybody see that the football championship can be a live prospect again. That doesn't exist. It's a far more complicated, nuanced discussion than belongs. And I'm sorry for doing down our own show than for like a 5-10 minute slot on the show here, or for 240 characters or whatever it is on Twitter. Like, there's no way that you can assemble the amount of information needed to actually get together a proper way of fixing this issue. And it is a big issue, and it is one that needs addressing. But as I said last night on the show, it's something that on numerous different levels the GEA should be modelling for now. They should be preparing for, they should be scenario planning for basically every possible case over the course of the next 10 years, because it is something that will need addressing. The funding needs addressing. How the population density of Dublin is going to essentially work in their favour over the course of God knows how long at this stage, and is going to work to the detriment of everything west of that. There are many scenarios the GA needs to be planning for right now, not turning around in 10-15 years time looking at the embers of a football championship and thinking, I think we might need to do something here, lads. We're beyond that now. We need to be thinking now what we actually can do, and it's up to the GA to do that, not people on Twitter, not people giving out yards on a radio show. It's up to the people actually in charge of the game to actually get a hold of it and do something. Yeah, it's just so tricky, because you still need the game to thrive in Dublin, not just hang on in Dublin, not just do okay, but to thrive, because that's 1.3 million currently population-wise. That'll creep up 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 million closer to 2050 and beyond. I mean, if you lose Dublin, if Dublin's not thriving, then the game is in a bad place. So you want it to thrive in Dublin and do amazingly well, but equally a population which dwarfs everything else thriving can only mean one thing. And that's where you're like, right, those two things aren't compatible. Do we have, pardon me ignorance on this, do we have the equivalent of, say, regional development officers positioned in every province or every county around the country, the same way the FAI perhaps would. Well, surely that's something.
Yeah, there are games promotion officers for sure, and they can be scoffed at, but they can make an amazing difference. I think they just need to be upped in every county around the country for starters. There's a lot of
funded
for
to the nth degree as well.
Yeah. But it's not easy. Two last quick stories. I know you have a clip from Steve Thompson, who we've been talking about. Liam O'Neill was on OTB AM this morning. We're going to hear from him later on in the middle hour, so I might jump past that clip.
Yeah, no worries.
Outside, guys. We might go to the Steve Thompson clip then before we wrap.
Yeah, the England Rugby World Cup winner has been diagnosed with early onset dementia and can't remember the 2003 final. He says the Lion has joined a group of former players who claim the sports left them with permanent brain damage, and they're starting legal action against authorities in the game. As I mentioned, World Rugby, the RFU in England and the WRU in Wales. Thompson, speaking to Sky today, has been describing the emotional impact of his diagnosis.
Just don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to put the family through it. Just thinking, what's the point? My wife's had people go through dementia in her family, and it's not nice. And you see, it's horrendous, to be honest. And when you're sort of my size, if I go through bad times with it, how's she going to cope with me? And the kids, it's a bit like not a death sentence for them, but it's not great, sort of ending their life. And you think, well, short-term pain, long-term gain if I'm not here. And, and I do when I'm low, you just think to yourself, perhaps I'll be better off. They'll be better off, rather than having this Jekyll and Hyde with them, because that's how you feel, and it's horrible when you actually think about it. And like I said, it's like an out-of-body experience. When you get angry and that, you're sort of there thinking, what are you doing? You don't want to be doing this. But it's just the rage that you just want to, and the frustration, and then suddenly, when you're going out into the kitchen and just think to yourself, oh, what was I going to do? And suddenly I just start getting angry again. Well, the kids, and like I said, the kids are having to back each other up, saying, no, Dad, you did say that, you promised that you're going to do this, you're going to do it. And when it's just not there at all, I don't know, it's just, no. I said, when I'm high, it's just good. When it's bad. We love this game. I love this game. Would I want my son playing this game? I don't think I would, if I'm honest.
My God, that is just so grim. 42 years old.
He's not alone, Joe, and that's the thing. That's the scary thing. There are others that will come forward with this. There are others that are probably younger than him that may have been suffering the same thing, and it's going to be an avalanche of cases over the course of the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And World Rugby, much like we mentioned with GA in a separate situation, needs to be starting to think about dealing with this properly now. And the players' unions need to be dealing with this properly now and learn lessons from how the PFA have mismanaged this situation in soccer over in England, and basically get their act together and help those players out that are most in need.
Yeah. It's the financial cost is one thing. It's just the human cost. I mean, he's 42. What is he going to do? It's just terrific.
Well, that's the thing. That to put it's not just the financial aspect of it. It's to put the supports in place for these families, to put the supports in place for the likes of Steve Thompson's wife and kids, that they can somehow learn to deal with this properly and set them up with the right charities and set them up with the right hospitals and stuff like that to make things a little bit easier.
Even so, a little bit easier. It's exactly right. Like, it's a nightmare. Yeah. It's just a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. And he was saying in that Guardian piece I mentioned at the top of the show that he says, I could look at Steph sometimes and she says it's like I'm a complete blank, and she'll go, I'm Steph. The name's gone. Bloody hell. Horrific. We'll talk about it tomorrow on Wednesday Night Rugby. So that's Steve Thompson. It's in the Guardian, that interview. It's horrific reading, but it's well worth checking out. Fellas, thanks very much. Richie, thank you.
Cheers.
Ronan, Mullen, thanks a million.
Cheers, Joe. Before
we take a short ad break and chat to Miguel ahead of Champions League all this week and Off the Bull, we're giving you the chance to win some tasty non-alcoholic beer, plus €250 as well to boot. So Beer is the new Irish non-alcoholic light lager. It's packed full of vitamins, minerals, designed to improve immune health. It's brewed using all natural ingredients. And because it's nearly Christmas, So Beer have a month's supply to give away each day this week, along with €250. To enter, just identify a mystery voice. He thinks Ger Gilroy has made a huge mistake hanging on to his Movember moustache well into December.
And the irony is, before that, he was fabulous.
He really was.
And the irony is, before that, he was fabulous.
text your answer to 53106. We'll announce our winner before the end of the show. It's all with thanks to So Beer, and you can check out so.beer for more. Now, we are talking to Miguel Delaney next. Manchester United need a point in Leipzig. Paul Pogba on the bench, and it would seem he is out of there.